What if the reason nothing changes is not because you are doing it wrong, but because you are trying too hard to make it feel real? Think about that. Most people sit in the dark, close their eyes, repeat the scene, force the emotion, strain for the perfect feeling, and then wonder why life stays the same. They believe the secret is intensity, more emotion, more effort, more pushing. But that pressure is the mistake. The moment you try to make it real, you quietly confess that, to you, it is still not real. And that one hidden confession keeps the old world alive. This is where everything turns. You were never asked to force the feeling. You were never asked to create the result with tension. You were asked to step into it, to wear it, to assume it, to let the inner man accept what the outer world has not shown yet. That is a very different move. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it, because this changes imagination from hard work into identity, not effort. Identity, not chasing, becoming. Stay with me, because if you truly catch this, the struggle begins to fall apart. And what used to feel impossible starts to feel almost obvious, almost natural, almost like something that was waiting for you to understand it all along. A man once said, "I try to imagine that it is already done. I keep telling myself it is finished, yet it still does not feel real." He thought something was broken in him. He thought he lacked the right gift, the right emotion, the right inner power. But the problem was much simpler. He was trying to produce a feeling instead of entering a state. So the question came back to him, when you imagine it, what are you actually trying to do? And his answer revealed everything. I am trying to make it feel real. That is the mistake many people make every single day. They sit with their desire like a project to complete. They grip it, they measure it, they test it. They ask, did I feel enough? Did I believe enough? Was that scene vivid enough? But life does not answer strain. Life reflects acceptance. The world does not mirror what you desperately try to feel for 5 minutes. It mirrors what you quietly accept yourself to be. That is why some people whisper one inner yes and their whole life begins to shift, while others spend years in mental effort and stay in the same story. The change begins when you stop asking, how do I make this happen? And start asking, who am I, if this is already true? That question is deeper, slower, stronger, and if you hear it the right way, it can change everything. You are not trying to make something happen. You are not begging the future to come closer. You are discovering the version of yourself that already lives in the end. Read that again in your mind. You are discovering, not manufacturing. Imagination is not pressure. It is assumption. It is stepping into a room inwardly and sitting there until it no longer feels strange. Think of someone wearing a new suit, a new dress, a new uniform. At first it feels stiff, unfamiliar, almost like a costume. But wear it long enough and it stops feeling new. It starts feeling like you. That is exactly how a new state enters your life. At first it can feel like acting. At first it may seem unnatural to say, I am chosen, I am secure, I am loved, I am successful, when the world around you gives different evidence. But the early discomfort is not failure. It is transition. It is the old self noticing that you are no longer feeding it. This is why many stop too soon. They mistake unfamiliarity for falsehood. But something can feel unfamiliar and still be true in seed form. If you keep returning to it, keep wearing it inwardly, the state becomes more natural. And when it feels natural, it begins to objectify. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. That is the shift most people miss. Many people think the feeling must be dramatic. They think it must shake their body, bring tears to their eyes, send chills through their skin, and flood them with emotion so powerful that no doubt remains. But the feeling of the wish fulfilled is often much quieter than that. It is not always fireworks. It is conviction. It is relief. It is the soft certainty that something is settled. You do not walk into your own home every night asking whether it still belongs to you. You do not check every chair and wall in panic. You enter with ease because ownership feels normal. That ordinary naturalness is the feeling. It is not emotional theater. It is inner knowing. It is the absence of argument. A calm mind can be far more powerful than an excited one. This is important, so don't miss it. If you keep chasing a huge emotional high, you may overlook the simple inner tone that actually creates change. The state fulfilled often feels like, of course. It feels like, this is handled. It feels like, I no longer need to fight this in my mind. That is why forcing emotion can delay the whole thing. You begin to worship sensation instead of identity. You become loyal to the performance instead of the state. And then you wonder why the outer world does not move. But the outer world is not waiting for your performance. It is waiting for your acceptance. Some hear this and test it for a day or two. They imagine once, maybe twice. They look at the world the next morning, see no visible change, and decide it was only fantasy. They return to old thoughts with almost no resistance. Old fear, old anger, old stories, old labels. The former self quickly takes the throne again and says, "See, nothing happened." But the problem was never imagination. The problem was staying power. Most people do not fail because the inner act has no power. They fail because they do not remain in the state long enough for it to harden into fact. They visit the new house inwardly, then move back into the old one before dawn. They touch the new life for a moment, then go spend the next 10 hours talking, thinking, reacting, and feeling as the old person. Then they blame the method, but life is faithful to consistency. It answers the dominant state, not the occasional mood. This is why return matters. Night after night, day after day, quietly, persistently, not as a chore, but as a decision. If the unseen matters more to you than appearance, you keep going even when there is no applause, no proof, no sign. That is where inner authority is born. And let me say this clearly, the delay is often not denial. The interval is the test of identity. Are you still who you chose to be when nothing outside confirms it yet? Tonight, when you lie down, do not try to force some giant emotional moment. Do something simpler and stronger. Choose one ordinary scene that would happen after your desire is already fulfilled. Not the big event itself, not the dramatic climax. Choose the natural moment after. Hear someone say, "I knew you would do it." Feel yourself walking through a normal day, with the problem no longer sitting on your chest. Notice the ease. Notice the silence where worry used to live. Maybe you look at your phone and smile because the message you wanted has already come. Maybe you pay a bill without tension. Maybe you wake up in a room that now feels safe. Maybe you hear congratulations in a casual tone. Because to everyone around you, this is now just your life. That is the moment to enter. The ordinary after is often more powerful than the dramatic before because it carries naturalness. It does not feel like fantasy. It feels lived in, real in a quiet way. Stay there. Touch the objects in the scene. Hear the voices. Feel your body move in that solved reality. Then leave it alone. You do not need to wrestle it for an hour. You need to return to it until it begins to feel familiar. That is how the unseen becomes more solid than the seen. And once that happens, the outer picture begins to lose its power to intimidate you. Call what is not yet visible as though it already is. Not as denial, not as pretending the facts do not exist, but as a higher claim about what you are willing to occupy within yourself. There is a huge difference between ignoring life and redefining it from the inside. You do not wait for the world to move first so that you can finally relax into your new self. You assume the state and then the world starts rearranging around that accepted center. Nothing new is truly being created in the deepest sense. You are selecting. You are tuning, you are entering a pattern and giving it life through identification. What you see today is often the shadow of older assumptions, older fears, older self-concepts, repeated so often they became normal. That is why today's picture should not be worshipped. It is history made visible. And if it is history made visible, then a different inner history can produce a different visible result. This is why reacting too much to current appearances keeps them alive. You keep telling the old story with your attention. You keep watering what you say you want to uproot, so slow down. The present scene may be loud, but it is not final. It may be heavy, but it is not master. If your inner acceptance changes, the mirror must eventually show another face. Stay with that, because this part alone can free a person from years of emotional slavery. Look closely at your daily life and you will see how much of it is automatic. You reach for the same thoughts at the same hour. You rehearse the same disappointment before anything even goes wrong. You enter rooms already expecting to be ignored, delayed, disrespected, rejected, or overlooked. You call it realism, but often it is only repetition, and repetition becomes identity when it goes unchallenged. This is why changing a state can feel almost uncomfortable at first. You are interrupting the old rhythm. You are refusing to hand your mind back to the same tired script. You are saying, "No, I do not live there now." Even if the outer world has not caught up, that refusal matters. It is an act of inner leadership. And yes, there will be moments when the old feeling returns. Moments when the body remembers fear faster than the mind remembers truth. Moments when the old self tries to rise and retake control. That does not mean you failed. It means you are in the middle of replacing a pattern that has had years of practice. Be patient, but do not be passive. Redirect quickly, gently, but firmly. Do not spend the whole day analyzing why the old thought came back. Return to the chosen state. Return again, then again. This is not about perfection. It is about loyalty. The state that gets your loyalty gets your life. And if that sounds intense, good. Because it is a serious thing to decide who you are. There is also something else people rarely understand. A state is not just a sentence you repeat. It is a whole inner climate, a whole posture of being. If you say, "I am finally free," but then spend the day arguing with every appearance, defending yourself in your head, and checking constantly for evidence, you are still living in bondage. If you say, "I am loved," but inwardly keep preparing for abandonment, your mouth has changed words, but your identity has not changed rooms. The new state must become the place you think from, not only the phrase you say out loud. Ask yourself, from what version of me am I reacting right now? From the chosen self or the familiar self? That one question can stop a spiral before it grows teeth. And here is the beautiful part. The chosen self does not need to shout. It often answers in simple ways. It does not rush to prove. It does not panic at delay. It does not beg the mirror for comfort. It knows. Even in training, it knows. So when the old pressure rises, you do not need a long war with it. You can pause and remember, that is not where I live anymore. Then move, speak, decide, rest, plan, even breathe from the new state. This is how imagination stops being a nighttime exercise and becomes a way of walking through the day. And once it enters the day, your world starts receiving different instructions from you. Maybe your desire is money. Then do not only imagine receiving it once. Imagine the settled life that follows. The bill paid with ease. The calm way you check your account. The absence of that constant inner shrinking. Maybe your desire is love. Then do not only imagine the big confession or dramatic reunion. Imagine the steady warmth after. The good morning message that feels normal. The peace of not wondering where you stand. The way your body relaxes when affection no longer feels uncertain. Maybe your desire is health. Then imagine moving through an ordinary afternoon with energy, appetite, steadiness, and quiet gratitude. Not a miracle scene, a natural scene. This matters because a fulfilled state is usually lived in simple moments. Real life is not one endless climax. It is ordinary peace. And when you train yourself to occupy the ordinary peace of the fulfilled desire, you are moving much closer to embodiment. People often skip this and keep chasing huge scenes because huge scenes feel more impressive. But impressive is not the goal. Natural is the goal. Reality forms around what feels natural to consciousness. So make the end simple enough to enter, but true enough to transform you. And if you need a retention reminder right here, here it is. This next part may be the piece that saves you months of frustration. Because once you stop chasing spectacular feelings and start choosing natural occupancy, everything begins to work with less friction. Another trap is checking. Constant checking. Looking at the phone, looking at the bank app, looking at the body, looking at the calendar, looking at other people's reactions, looking for signs every 10 minutes. This habit seems harmless, but it reveals mistrust. It says, I still need the outer world to tell me who I am. And as long as that is your system, the outer world remains your master. You must reverse the order. Let the inner claim lead and let the outer world follow. That does not mean you become careless or irresponsible. It means you stop making appearances the judge of truth. There is a silent dignity in this. A person who has inwardly accepted the end does not need to scratch at the door of evidence every hour. They become composed. They keep living. They keep returning inwardly. They stop digging up the seed to see whether it has roots. This is where deep peace begins, not because nothing challenges you, but because you are no longer easy to throw off center. You start to feel a new steadiness under your reactions, a new authority under your words. You still see the current facts, but you do not bow to them. You know they are not final. And the more often you refuse to be hypnotized by appearances, the weaker the old reality becomes in your nervous system. That matters. Because a state is not only spiritual, it becomes physical too. The body learns the new normal from what the mind repeatedly inhabits. At first, you may feel like you are pretending. Be honest about that, but do not be frightened by it. Every new state feels artificial to the person who has worshipped the old one for years. The first day in a new job can feel strange. The first night in a new home can feel unreal. The first time someone calls you by a new title can sound almost foreign. But repetition turns the foreign into the familiar. You do not need immediate comfort, you need continued occupancy. This is why returning to the scene matters so much. You are teaching your mind a new place to live. You are showing your body a new version of safety. You are telling the deeper self again and again, this is who I am now. Over time, something subtle happens. The scene no longer feels like a technique, it starts feeling like memory. The desire no longer feels far away. It begins to feel present, then normal, then obvious. And when that shift happens, you stop asking when. You stop chasing how. There is a strange calm that enters you. The problem loses emotional weight. You may even find yourself forgetting to worry about it because you are no longer fed by the old story. That is a powerful sign, not because forgetting is magic, but because forgetting often means detachment from the old identity. So if the scene feels stiff tonight, fine. Return tomorrow. If it feels dim, return anyway. If your mood is low, return softly. Consistency beats intensity more often than people realize. There is a deeper reason this works. Life on the outside is constantly taking shape around the meanings you repeatedly consent to within, not once, repeatedly. The inner yes becomes structure, it becomes tone, it becomes selection, it becomes behavior you did not force, words you did not rehearse, opportunities you did not chase with the same desperation as before. When identity changes, movement changes. When movement changes, outcomes start changing. People call it coincidence. They call it luck. They call it timing. But so often it began with a private shift no one saw. A person stopped being the one who expects little. A person stopped seeing themselves as the one always left behind. A person stopped worshipping old pain as proof of permanent truth. And because that inner seat changed, life had to speak to them differently. So if you have been asking, why is nothing moving? Maybe the better question is, have I truly moved? Not in words, not for 10 emotional minutes, but in identity, in self-acceptance, in the quiet place where you make meaning of your life. That is where the real work happens. Not glamorous, not loud, but decisive. If you are still here, let this sink in fully. You do not need to fight the whole world. You need to stop agreeing with the version of you that keeps recreating the same world. Once that agreement breaks, new doors begin to recognize you. So tonight, do this with simplicity. Choose the fulfilled state. Enter a small natural scene that would happen after your desire is already fact. Feel its ease. Hear its ordinary words. Let your body rest in the version of you for whom this is no longer a question. Then rise tomorrow and protect that state as best you can. When appearances try to drag you back, remember, they are often yesterday speaking. Let today speak differently. When fear asks for proof, answer with return. When doubt asks for a deadline, answer with persistence. When the old self starts its old cry, do not argue for hours. Simply refuse it your throne. You are not trying to make something real with force. You are accepting what is real in consciousness first, so life can echo it in form. That is the whole movement. Simple but not shallow. Gentle but not weak. Quiet but deeply creative. Keep going until the unseen feels more solid to you than the visible facts. Keep going until the new identity feels less like effort and more like home. And when that day comes, the outer change will not feel like a miracle dropped from the sky. It will feel like the most natural thing in the world, like life finally caught up with what you had already become inside. And if this message found you at the right moment, do not just admire it, test it, live it, return to the state, stay there, and watch what begins to answer you.